Okay, dear viewers, welcome back to the What is to be Done podcast. Today I have the distinct honor of welcoming a very dear friend of mine, an old friend, Fatima Jamali. Fati currently serves as an intelligence analyst at the Department of War of United States of America, but she brings a perspective that goes far beyond a third-party report from the U.S. Having grown up in Iran, she possesses a profound first-hand understanding of the nation Iran, of Iran's political dynamics and the complexity of its society and history. In this episode, Fati is going to help us navigate the latest updates regarding the U.S.-Israelis joint military campaign against Iran. We will also be exploring the potential scenarios now facing the Islamic Republic, and perhaps most importantly, its domestic political landscape and political groupings of this regime and its final fate. Before we dive in, if you enjoy our insights, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. For our viewers tuning in from mainland China, please remember to subscribe to our Chinese Bilibili channel, Young Analyst Club, and the What is to be Done Chinese channel. Without further ado, let's begin today's conversation. First, I want to ask Fati, what is the current state of the war? In your assessment, have the sustained aerial campaigns and decapitation strikes significantly erode the Islamic Republic's governing foundation and maybe its apparatus of repression? Based on what we've seen, the regime's chain of command has remained sort of resilient despite decapitation, elimination of several high-ranking IRGC officials and the killing of Khamenei. Does this suggest that the regime's structural integrity remains intact? The regime's, especially IRGC leadership, remain cohesive at the current moment, or maybe there's some sort of a lagging effect. Maybe after there's a short temporary ceasefire, something might happen. There's still possibility of regime change. So, what is your take?
Hey, good morning. Thanks for the opportunity for having me here. A lot of smaller questions into your bigger question here. I want to start with the sustained aerial campaign. We have had, as a U.S. military, air superiority over other battles before.
Yeah.
We had it in Afghanistan, we had it in Iraq. Prior to that, we had it in Vietnam, and we have done that for years. And we know very well, it's a very established point that aerial campaigns alone cannot give you the control of the land. Yes,
Yeah.
they're very helpful. They will make operations go way more smoothly. But as controlling who would rule the land, that would need some sort of ground control over the area that you're interested. Same goes for Iran. Aerial campaigns we knew before, Israel and America, yes, air superiority day and night. However, at the end of the day, whoever has control of the streets in Tehran would rule the country. That goes for that. And then as for IRGC, Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, sort of leadership and how decentralized they are, you really have to go back years, like history, how they were formed and how they expanded and increased their power and influence over the country. It could be, I think it would be a good educated guess for me to say IRGC controls over almost 40% of Iran economy directly. And by that, I mean what gets imported, what gets exported. They have monopoly over a lot of basic goods. They have their own ships. They have their own ports. They have their own construction companies, like the bigger ones, the ones that they make really huge highways, domes, energy infrastructures. They own them. So it's not just one military branch and a bunch of like soldiers or commands or commanders, if you will. It's a much larger and I guess industrial base, you can call them at this point. And they have done very well to decentralize their power, meaning if you hit them on the ground, their sea part is still going to work, is it still going to load the ships, is it still going to send them out, is it still going to export and import. Just because you killed the head of them, if he indeed was the head, the supreme leader, the former supreme leader Ali Khamenei, which he could have just been a symbolic person where IRGC had the control all along. He could have had maybe some power, but it's very hard for us to tell that if he indeed had power. But now that he's gone and IRGC is still intact, that would make you think, oh, okay, so he must have not been as crucial as many thought he was.
Yeah.
So, and as for their longevity, yes, they are going to, in terms of their repression, apparatus being weakened, they've been barely touched, and that goes. They use their special forces on the ground, and they use their ground forces to repress people whenever like uprising happens, and that is pretty much very decentralized to begin with. It's very hard to attack them, even with the drones being over the very close to them and wanting to hit them. They're very decentralized, and you also have to remember Iran is a huge country. It's a really big country. You can't just go to the river and hit them. That part of the IRGC has not been touched. Their navy, yes, degraded. You could say their SAM, their surface to air missiles, extremely weakened. It's going to take them a while to be able to, build that back up. Their drones and then their missiles production, yes, definitely have been affected to a point that it's going to probably take a month, if not years, to go back to the pre-war status. It's doable because they pretty much independently make up all of these themselves. They're not relying on other countries to produce these. I hope that answered the first part of your question.
Yeah, that indeed answered my first part of the question. So just as you mentioned, it's the IRGC has been pretty resilient, and the aerial assault does not actually lead to regime change. So previously when I listened to an episode of Jake Sullivan's Long Game, he actually mentioned in order to make sure zero enrichment and set prerequisite for ceasefire negotiation, the most effective way would be destroy underground enrichment facility in under Isfahan underground by sending special ground forces. Do you think that's that's a viable option to send like a small special assault team, ground assault team, maybe joined by Israel and United States to carry out that campaign and then set the prerequisite for talk? Because as the regime facing existential threat, it's very unlikely that they would accept zero enrichment. Many analysts has said that. So what do you think? Do you think President Trump would eventually send ground forces to solve the problem?
Correct. So I think the regime in Iran, if there's one thing that gives them a chance to still stay in power and for Americans and the West go and talk to them and negotiate with them, is that uranium piece. So if that's the only thing that they have that kind of guarantees their stay, they are going to hold on to it as dearly and as nearly as possible as they can. Now, obviously, the U.S. has two options to retrieve that uranium. One would be through negotiation, peacefully so, cooperate with each other to either remove the nuke or not the nuke, the enriched uranium out of the country, or pretty much make it to a point that is not as enriched. Iran has not obviously agreed to do so, and again, for obvious reasons. You have cornered them, and then the West has cornered them, and then that's the only thing they got, the only bargaining chip. And as far as a second route that the U.S. can take, it would be sending in some sort of a force, whether it be special forces, a very elite force, and it's not just going to be special forces. We're going to have some scientists, some perhaps people who are very familiar how to handle radioactive material. And we're talking about a very complicated operation, one that probably has never been seen and done before. You're talking about, like, and this Isfahan is the center of Iran, so you have to somehow transport yourself either probably via planes to the country. You have to find the airbound, like where you can land in your probably really big planes, and you have to keep it operational.
Undetected.
Yeah,
Remain undetected.
You will be detected because these planes are big.
Oh yeah.
Not being shot at, and then take out your equipment to probably start clearing the route for yourself to get to the uranium. That is, if we know exactly where the uranium is. And I mean, that area is huge. I don't know how long it will take this force to find out where exactly the uranium is, and then you have to get to it. So what kind of equipment are you going to need? Probably really heavy equipment because it's been bombarded before by our B-2, our strategic bombers. So it's pretty buried. So now you have to dig through it, and now you have to load it. It's about almost, I think, 500 kilograms of enriched uranium. And now you have to load it to your plane, assuming that plane is still intact over there and the band is still operational and it can still take off. How long this digging and loading is going to take, and then you have to extract everything and get the heck out of the country. So it is logistically a very difficult, I think, is not doing it justice. Complicated process. I don't know how much a president is willing to assume risks, because there's going to be a tremendous amount of risk with equipment and people involved.
Yeah.
And especially like when I think if you, as a reference, you want to go back to where the U.S. went into the middle of the country, almost, well, western part of the country, to save one of the American jet pilots that went down, and that included hundreds of people. And then we lost a few numbers of handful of jets and helicopters, well, not jets but planes and helicopters, to retrieve that one person. Now this is going to be 10 times, if not more, complicated of an operation. So the risk is big. Is the president willing to take the risk or not? I wouldn't know, but that's obviously always on the table, and it's an option. It could go successful, it could, and it could also fail. So
yeah. So what is your overall assessment of the America's military campaign so far? Do you think it's been successful? Because, well, to us and many other foreign policy analysts, security analysts in the political science circle, they have criticized this military campaign for lack of clear plan or end game, and also there's a lack of coordination among U.S. allies, and even with Israeli, because they clearly have different goals in this military campaign, because maybe Prime Minister Netanyahu just want to weaken Iranian regime, weaken its capacity to carry out renewed assault against Israel. But the United States may have different goals. I think President Trump just want to achieve zero enrichment through this quick military campaign, but apparently at the current state, it's going to evolve into a protracted conflict, of course, according to Islamic Master, even though in the coming days there's sort of ceasefire agreement on both sides. It's unlikely there will be lasting peace. So maybe could you please share some of your takes on the current state, and maybe different scenarios of the end game, how this is going to end?
Of course. So, I mean, tactically, the U.S. Has once again showed its air superiority. That they have, numerous numbers of jets, and then they could operate deep into the enemy's line, that they could use their tankers and then, fuel their jets and continue operations for weeks. And then, a lot of munitions, a lot of different capabilities they tried. One of them was newer that they tried in the new conflict. It's an army missile, precision guided, and they've been very effective. We also have seen drones, from both sides. The American used pretty much reverse engineered the Iranian Shahed drones, and it's been very, successful, cheaper than the missiles and other munitions that the U.S. has been using. And also the Iranian showed that really cheap, affordable Shahed drones can be really very challenging in the combat. So it has definitely, I would say, changed the perspective on the defense side of the U.S., maybe the West, maybe even the Arab Gulf countries. That there are, do multiple, did business deals with Ukraine to get some sort of much cheaper and capabilities instead of, you have the THAAD system, you have the Patriot system, which costs over $1 million, sometimes $2 million if you want to spend to interceptors
with limited productive
drone.
capacity. Yeah.
Exactly. Very slow production and very expensive. But these are like the tactical successes that you can talk about, the new things that the U.S. has tried and have been successful. And obviously, again, the Iranian IAD and integrated air defense system has been degraded, and then the missiles production, their drone production has gone significantly, pretty much damaged, and it will take them again months to years to get back to where they were, and then they still have the uranium. Enriched uranium is still a challenge. It's still not been fixed. It has been bombarded very deeply, but they can still go back, dig out, and then continue the business. So tactically, yes. Overall, I would say it's not been a failure for America. However, strategically, there were a few issues that America wanted to win. One of them, again, was the complete the zero enrichment uranium, that one. So that has not happened. You wanted to completely annihilate the missiles production, especially the longer range ones, like the ballistic ones. That is still going on. And the second the U.S. and West leaves, Iran is going to go back to reconstitution. As a matter of fact, they already have. So that's still going to be an issue. And then the third one was that Iran should stop supporting the proxies in the region. They have not done that either. So strategically, so far, nothing has been achieved. And so now moving forward, I think economic pressure, you could see the administration has changed the perspective, like their method to pivot more toward economic pressure, not only sanctions, but also taking Iranians' tankers in international waters and interject them and then not let that go back and forth. And with oil, you have to have the production going. You can't stop it. If you stop it, it's going to damage the oil wells and the infrastructure severely, and it will take months and months to bring it back to operation. And soon enough, I think the projection is maybe 2 weeks to a month, Iran is going to run out of tankers or storage barrels that can save their oil, because they have to keep pumping, keep loading, and keep shipping. And if that cycle stops, it's going to be a really big challenge for Iranians. So maybe that this economic pressure will, put them in the verge of coming to the table and signing an agreement that is sort of favorable for both sides. I think that's what the administration is hoping for, what we are hoping for. And obviously, over time, we could still apply some economic pressure and still some threat over them. And maybe this time around, if people do come to the street, maybe we can support the people more on time and actually target the LEC, the ground forces of IRGC or the security forces, and that might help. But the outlook for regime change, at least right now, I don't see it.
Yeah, it's likely because they're the oppositions almost do not exist. They're poorly organized, and they either are in jail or been killed, right? So
Correct.
yeah.
And again, IRGC, again, if you go back to their history, is a formidable, strong, very experienced force, especially on the ground. I mean, if you go back 20 years, they have been in the Middle East fighting. They have fought alongside the U.S. against ISIS. They have been doing network proxy works for like years now in the region. They're very experienced. They're very experienced suppressing oppressions, suppressing uprisings. They are very. They're not just like a kind of an unorganized militia. They are actually organized, somewhat professional. They kind of know what they're doing. And then they're very decentralized. Unlike what we saw in Russia, Ukraine, where the commanders were the decision maker in the for the battlefield, and the NCOs and like the lower officers could not make a decision on themselves to move forward, to proceed. IRGC is not like that. It's very decentralized. People in the street, the leader who has like control of one street, or and they can make a decision for that one street that they have over. So again, with the force being so decentralized, so brutal, so experienced, and not any other opposition on side, especially the people not being armed or trained, it's going to be challenging. An aerial campaign is not enough. It's never been enough, and it's not going to change for Iran.
Can you call the current Iran a military dictatorship, given that IRGC are the one institution that is in charge? They are a coercive apparatus, but they also highly politicized. I see most Iran experts call them the deep state. So, is that correct to call Iran a military dictatorship? Are IRGC still ideologically committed to the Islamic Revolution, or they're just a bunch of men with guns?
That's a really challenging question to answer, because I think for that to be really objective and not so subjective, you have to actually do some sort of a survey, some sort of a really deep intelligence work to figure out, okay, who's religious and who's not, and why they're doing this. I think my opinion is that they're not as religiously motivated anymore. Maybe they used to be 20 years ago, 25 years ago. But at this point, I think it's more like a mafia type, really like an organization that has a goal, obviously has a goal of maintaining the regime in Iran, and because that suits their profit, that suits their interest, that gives them power, right, to stay in power and to control the country. I think they're more motivated toward that. And obviously, I mean, maybe there's some nationalism going into it. Maybe there is an aspect of religion. I'm not completely excluding it, but to be just religious, I don't think that's the case for this IRGC. They're more of a, we are going to protect this. This is a power thing for them, and I'll obviously profit. And yes, I would call it a military, pretty much organized regime at this point, because again, they control the economy, they control the borders, they control even right now the negotiations. They are the ones who tell the administration of the government part of the Iran who is going to talk to Americans and who's not going to, and when they're going to. So yes, they absolutely are running the show in Iran. And again, it's not just guns, it's a lot of things. They have a lot of power of different types, horizontally and vertically across Iran, not just top down.